Hey everyone, welcome to the next tutorial. So this tutorial right here is the one we did in the last video, but what I'm actually going to do is erase this. And my goal for this one is we're going to make a person class again, just like we did before, and then we're also going to make a food class. And I think the way I want to do it is we'll have like food objects like apples, bananas, grapes, and then we'll have a person object just like we did in the previous video. But the person will have like an inventory attribute that will contain like it's like they have like a bag with them and it has a bunch of food objects in it and they can eat it. And when they eat it, it'll remove that food from the object. And I don't know exactly how I'm going to set it up, but you can follow along with me and hopefully you'll learn something from it. So I'm going to start by making the food class. So we say class and we're going to make a food. And then we do our constructor function. We learned that in the last video, or the part one of the classes video. And what does a food have? A food has a name, so self.name equals name. And I'm actually going to show you something because you might come across this later. Remember how I said with variables you usually don't want to do underscores? There's like a very specific reason you would use an underscore. Normally when I type code like this, if a food requires a name, its constructor method I would put a parameter called name. So when a food item gets created, this whatever the heck gets thrown into this name parameter gets assigned to this name variable that the food class has. But you see how that's kind of confusing because everything's named the same thing. Like I have a variable called self.name and it's assigned a name that gets thrown as an argument. These three things all have the same name, and you seeing this might be like, do they have to have the same name? And they don't. The only names that have to match is the parameter and this right here, because this is saying self.name equals the parameter that gets thrown in. So what you'll see a lot of times when you look up code online, people will put underscores like that to distinguish that they're separate. Like these two are linked to each other, and this is like a separate one. But because like we want to put the food's name, like this is the only name I would use for this type of argument. It's the name of the food, and I don't want to use a different word. So to separate it from this word right here, I just throw an underscore in front of it, if that makes any sense. So self.name, the food's name, equals the name that gets passed in and assigned to this variable, if that makes any sense. But you don't have to type that. You can leave the underscore off. The underscore just makes it easier to read, and you'll see people put an underscore like that in their code. And if you ever come across that, that's usually what that means. So anyway, a food has a name. It also has... we're going to keep it simple. So it also has like a weight gain value, like how much weight you gain after you eat it. So that'll be another parameter that needs to get passed in when it gets made. So that's really all we need for food right now. Then we'll make the person class, and I'm going to make it just like I did in the last video. So a person has a name, age, and weight. And we're not going to worry about the speak right now, even though I made that method in the last video, but we don't need it for this tutorial. I do want to give them an inventory object, so they'll have like self.inventory, which would just be an empty list. To make an empty list, you just do open and close square brackets. So this is kind of like, you can think of it as they have a basket with them and it's empty. And later on, we're gonna make some methods that can put food in the basket, and then they can eat something out of the basket and it removes it from their inventory. So what can a person do? Well, they can we'll do something called add food. So this is like a method where they can put some food in their basket so they can add something to it. So it requires a food object, and we'll do self.inventory. And remember, to add something to a list, you just do append. So it appends the food to the inventory. And then we'll also do remove food. And what it'll do is it requires a food. It's self.inventory.remove food. So this will just remove that item from the list. And then we'll do eat, so they can eat. So self dot, and it requires a food. And how do we want to do this? So first thing we'll do, we need to check and see if they even have this food in their inventory. So in order to do that, you can actually do an if statement. You can do if food in self.inventory. This just says if that food object, if one of those is in the inventory, do this thing. I'm not actually going to write the code right now. You can actually put the word pass as a placeholder if you want to come back later and write the code. So I'm going to do that right now. So right now, if the food's in the inventory, we're just going to pass. I'll come back and write the code later. Else, meaning if they don't have that food in their basket or inventory, I'm going to print a format string and put self.name does not have that available. But if they have it in their basket, the first thing I want to do is print a format string and eats a So what this will do, if that food is available in the person's inventory, I want to print the person's name, eats, and then it accesses the food object, which is we made up here, or the food class is up here, and it accesses its name to write it to the screen. So if Jody ate an apple, it would say Jody eats an apple. And then we also want to remove it from the basket since we just ate it. So you would do self.remove food. Means this object is going to run its remove food method. And we're going to pass the food into it. So this will remove the food from the basket or the inventory. And then we also want to do the weight gain. So self.weight plus equals plus equals food dot weight gain. So this, when it gets to this point, it'll access the person's weight and it'll add the food's weight gain value to their weight. So let's see if all this works. So let's make a food. We'll make an apple and it equals a food. It's going to be a food object. And what does it require? It requires a name and a weight gain value. So the name of it is apple and its weight gain value we'll say is 1 pound. And we'll also do like a banana, and we'll do it's a food, it's called a banana, and we'll make it do 2 pounds. And then let's make a person. So Jody equals a person whose name is Jody, age is 30, weight is 160, and let's print Jody's weight like we did in the last video, Jody.weight, and actually, before we print the weight, we got to add some food into his inventory. So we'll do Jody.add food, and we want to add that apple. So we've added the apple to his inventory. So let's just see if this works so far. Let's print Jody's inventory. So it says it didn't give us the name because we didn't tell it to print the food's name. We just told it to print the food object. So that's why this code right here, it worked, but it says food object, which is what it is. We told it to print what's in my inventory. And you see how we have this open and closed bracket right here, and inside it we have this gibberish. This is the actual food object. It doesn't say apple because we didn't say print the food's name. We just said print what's in my inventory, and there's a food object in it. So it worked. So now what we can do is we've printed my inventory, and then we'll print Jody's weight, and then we'll tell Jody to eat, and we'll eat the apple, and then we'll print Jody's weight. And then we'll also print the inventory after we've eaten the apple to see if it has disappeared. So we print the inventory. There's the apple object. It's just this food object. I weigh 160. I eat the apple. Now I weigh 161 because the apple has a weight gain value of 1. And then we printed the inventory after I ate it. Now the inventory is empty. So again, if you're like me and you like games, you can see how this would help with like an inventory system. Like if your character had an inventory with a bunch of items like potions or weapons, and you use like one of the potions, you can, after you use it, you remove it from the list. But I mean, you can use it for like a million different things. But yeah, so that's kind of how two different classes can work together. Trying to think what we would learn in the next video. I'm pretty sure I'm probably going to stick on classes for another video or two, because there's a lot to learn with them. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video, and I'll come up with some other things we can do with classes, because I'm sure there's a lot more. Thanks, bye.